All right, guys, so you have cast it on, you learned how to do that. Now it is time to knit. So to knit, what you're gonna do is you have your, the tail. Actually, what we're gonna do is go ahead and cut so it doesn't confuse us. Leave about 3 to 4 inches of a tail, but go ahead and cut that piece, and that way we can, it just, sometimes it gets confusing and you don't want any more to confuse you. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick up your needle that has your stitches that you casted on. Remember, we have 5 here, 5 individual stitches. You're going to put that needle into your left hand, and you're going to pick up your other needle in your right hand. And so they will be held just like this. This is pretty much how you always will want to set it up at the beginning of each row for this stitch. And you can see here this side, that's, I know that I have really nubbly kind of yarn that I'm using, but still you can kind of see that this side is more smooth, and then this side is sort of the bulky, it's where the beginning of your knitting is started. So it's kind of knotty over on this side. You want these knots and this sort of bulky part to always face the inside of the needles. So I would not have it facing this way and knitting with this way. You want it to like be the middle of the sandwich, so between those two. So this is how you've always got to set it up at the beginning of each row. So your left needle has the stitches and the knots here are facing your right empty needle. All right, to hold your hands, this is important too. So just like getting comfortable, and this will come with time, but you'll get comfortable with how you should kind of position your fingers. You really want to keep your fingers, your left hand finger, at least on that top stitch. You can even hold on top of your stitches, but it's that same thing where these needles, these stitches will just fly right off the end, and then you've lost all of your stitches that you've casted on, and you have to kind of oftentimes have to do those again. So don't let that happen. There's a part of your needles you can see where it's really pointy up at the top, and then it gradually increases to about right there, and then that stays the same width all the way down the rest of your needle. This is about at that part where it gets to the thickest part. That's about where you want your knitting, the front stitch to kind of get up near that part. It's really hard to knit if you're knitting way back here. It stretches your stitches if you're trying to take them off the needle. So when you're working, that closest stitch to the end should be not right at that point like that, but you want it to be a little bit kind of close there. And then your finger should be really snugly holding that stitch down. Just your fingers are tight, kind of on that. And then your knots are here, and this work is, your needle is over here. All right, so this is how we start the knitting. This is what it looks like when we begin our knitting. So to do the basic knit stitch, then you are going to take your empty needle and you are going to go right here. So this stitch has the round part and then it has the knot at the bottom. So you are going to go from underneath up below it. I'm going to come out again so you can see it. Make sure that you never go into this knot. That knot, especially the first stitch, is always going to be loose. Like you see it right there. It's kind of loose and nubbly like that. You have to go to the left of that. Get that out of the way. That is not the stitch. All right, so you have to go in to the left of that part. You go underneath the stitch and you go right here. So that knot is now over here. And inside, I always think of it as like they're giving a hug. So they're kind of right next to each other. There's nothing in between them. The stitch actually wraps around them. So again, once again, it looks like this. My fingers are holding it. My right needle goes underneath the first stitch. so that they're right there. And then what you do is you kind of, once you go under, you grab a hold of both knitting needles in the left hand, and then with your right hand now is free, you kind of give a little bit of a tug just to kind of get that taut, and then you take the yarn that's attached to the ball, it goes around the back and it goes up in between the two needles from the back and comes up and around. I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to take it out so you can see. So I'm right here. Essentially, you're wrapping from behind just the right needle. So I go around the back, up through the middle, and over to the right. Now, once you get here, this part is important because you've got to take your pointer finger and you've got to pin that yarn right there so it doesn't get really loose. So you kind of pin it, and then you take the rest of your right hand and pick that right needle back up. So now your finger is pinned right there, and then you have your fingers back on the needle. So you have two working needles in each hand, one needle in each hand now. This finger is still on that stitch, all right? So if you look from above now, what you are going to see is you have the yarn wrapped around your right needle, and you have kind of like a little hole underneath, like right in between the two needles. So what you do is this right needle goes straight down, like touching that other one. It goes straight down in the middle of that hole, and it comes out this side just like that, and then the stitches get pushed up a little bit, and that goes right off the left side, the left needle, and it just comes off just like that. So you've wrapped yarn around the needle, and then you've transferred it here. So it's just grown a little bit from wrapping the needle. So we're going to do the next one the exact same way, and I'll take you through the whole thing. So just watch and then try it yourself. All right. So here I go. I have my two fingers are now holding both top stitches, so neither of them are going to fall off the ends of the needles because I've got them held tight. All right, that's the most important thing because I've seen so many pieces of work come off because we didn't hold it. So you've got that. Your right needle comes to this next stitch. This is the stitch we're working with now, holding it with my left finger, and I go under that stitch to where they're giving each other a hug. There's nothing in between them right there. Put that needle in, so both needles are now in my left hand. I take the yarn attached to the ball. This one's the tail needle, the tail yarn. That's the one that kind of can get in your way until you get a little bit further down, so just beware of that. So I have the yarn attached to the ball. I take it and I go around the back, up the middle, and to the right. And then I take my pointer finger, pin it right there, grab the rest, my fingers grab the rest of that right needle, and now I'm back just looking exactly like this, fingers at the top on both, and my right needle is going to go straight down right there and come up and under the outside of the yarn and take that yarn off the left needle, and now it's onto my right, holding it tight. And now I am on this stitch now. So here I go again. You don't want to pull your work very far. Try and keep it as close together as it can. If we pull it too far, it can stretch out your work. So try not to do that. Just try and let it stay where it's comfortable there. So right needle, here we go again. It goes under this stitch. And now they're touching, giving a hug right under there. Together, hold it in your left hand. Take the long yarn attached to the ball. Take it around the back, up the middle, and over to the right. Pin it. Take the needle back into your hand. And then right here, this right needle kind of slides down, straight down, underneath, and takes that stitch off. Now we have 3 stitches over here, 2 left over here. Same thing, fingers are in place so no work goes slipping off. Under this one, just like that. Now in the left hand, take the yarn around the back, up the middle, to the right, pin, back to 2 hands, and this right one. This one is going to be tricky for you because you're going to have to learn how to let some of the stitches slide a little bit, so it's easier to go down with your needle. It's kind of hard if you stay stiff like that. So it's going to just be a little bit of a dance that you're going to have to learn with how to work them, but you'll get it, I promise. So straight down so that you're just going right under that stitch and pull it off the left. So it's just transferred to the right. Now I have 4 stitches and 1 left. The last stitch you do the exact same way. So here I go, under that one, hold, long yarn, around the back, up the middle, and to the right, pin. My needle's back in the same different hands. And then this one goes straight down, underneath, and off. So now this is my empty needle. You can take a minute and kind of slide your stitches down, look at the stitches that you just made. So this is the end of my scarf or whatever it is I'm making, belt or whatever. And this, every time you transfer the needles, the stitches from one needle to the other, it's getting another row longer. So it's just going to keep growing out this way. So this is what that one looks like. You've just done your first row of knitting, and that is all this stitch is. This is how most people knit this way their whole lives. So later we'll learn how to do other things, but this is all you've got to know how to do for right now. So I'm going to show you how to do this next. Once it's like this is how it ends. Switch needles in your hand. So move this one over to the left hand again, and your right is the empty one. Remember, this is the knotty, like the knot part with your scarf, so it should not be facing outside of the sandwich. That's the inside of the sandwich. So that's this part that's all in here. They face the empty needle. So that is how you always start it. I'm moving my stitches up to a little bit closer up there, putting my finger on to hold onto those, and then I'm ready to start over again. So I'm just gonna do it a little bit with a little bit more speed this time, but you can still slow enough so everybody can still see. Take the empty one, I'm gonna go under this one, together, around the back, up the middle, right, back together, and under and off. Slide that down, next stitch, under, kind of give that a little tug, around the back for a pin, and straight down and off. Third stitch, under, together, around the back, up the middle to the right, pin, and then the right needle goes straight down underneath and off. All right, next one, under, up, pull, around the back, up the middle to the right, straight down, under, and off. All right, we've done 4 stitches. Last one, we go under this. No yarn is in between when you go in through that stitch. Around, pin, to get separate, and then under and off. And now we have just gotten 1 row further. So you can see that the scarf or whatever I'm making is growing, and this is what it's looking like. It's getting further this way. So starting again, switch hands, and then remember, don't have it on that side of the sandwich, it goes to the inside. So there it is. Now pay attention right here. This is that big, the first one is always going to be big and loose and floppy. So make sure that you leave that one out of the way, and that first stitch is going just here. There's nothing in between them except the wood. Get rid of that. That first one needs to stay over to the right. So I'm going to do another couple of rows, and then I will show you, we'll pretend that that's the end and show you how to end it. So here we go. I won't talk during this one, I'll just let you kind of watch it. Just like that. Here we go. Pin, turn off. Pin. And last one. Under. So that is 3 rows. And then we'll do another row. All right, so this is how we start now. All the nubbies in the middle. Here it goes. Get rid of the floppy inside. Round. Holding on to those stitches at the top there. I don't want any of my work to fly away. Go off the end of the needles. There. Under. Back around. And last one. Just like that. All right, so at this point, I would suggest continuing to practice this until at least you have like 4 inches of length or so. But some of you, I'd love it if all of you did. You could just keep doing this and practice this until you're almost at the end of your ball of yarn, which I think would be great. That would be excellent practice, and we would be ready when you come back to school in the fall for us to move on and do a project with it. So if you can, that would be awesome. But if you get to a place and you want to try ending, then we can try that too. You could always untie everything once you've ended your knitting and reball it and then start over. I'd love for you to keep practicing. If you can, keep practicing casting on and the knit stitch and casting off. But as long as you can remember how to knit, then we could at least go over the casting on part and casting off in the fall together. But try and practice all of them just because it's really good to know. So I'm going to pretend like I have already knitted like at least 4 inches or almost to the whole ball. You don't want to use up all of your yarn because you're going to need to use some of it to cast off, which is what I'm going to show you now in just a second in the next video. So let's go ahead and stop there, pretend like I've done my 4 inches, and then we'll click this off and then start a new video with casting off.